guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk about secondary ignition waveform. One of the most difficult diagnostic procedures for me is actually be able to read and understand secondary ignition waveform. I've been doing a lot of homework lately trying to get better understanding, what is happening inside the cylinder and how that affects our ignition. One of the most challenging parts these days is basically to get a good ignition waveform in the first place. In order to do that, you got to have a graphing multimeter or some sort of lab scope, and basically we can get two ways to get the ignition waveform. It's the primary or the secondary ignition waveform. Primary we're getting by basically back probing a control wire on our coil, just to take the test lead and back probe the control wire on the coil, and we get a primary. Now we can do that only on the 2-wire coil and plugs. Any other system with a 3 or 4 wire coil and plugs, it's not possible, because if we get back probe our control wire, we will only get the signal like a square wave coming from the computer. Basically sends a signal to the driver inside the coil when we fire the coil. So other option is to get a secondary ignition waveform. Now the secondary ignition waveform, that part is getting more and more difficult, because there are different tools that allows you to do that. There are different companies are making different tools for it. Like this is basically like a little pedal that you put on top of the coil to get your signal. So Snap-on makes, or used to make, I'm not sure if they still makes or not, but they have basically one of these inductive pedals, or whatever you want to call them, especially made for specific coil. I have a couple of them, and also there's another tool, like a pedal you basically put on top of your coil to get your signal. Now this gets more difficult as well as the coil getting more and more insulated. It's hard to get the signal as well. The best way to get the signal is basically from ignition wire itself, and this is the BNC. This is the ignition pickup for this is a BNC. This end of the BNC. Basically, you clamp this on your ignition wire to get your secondary ignition waveform. Now this is OTC version, I believe. Here's one from Snap-on. This is the inductive pickup from Snap-on. Basically, you put it over the ignition wire to get your signal. Now this can be used on like a wave spark system or coil needle plug system. Now if you have a coil and plug, there is no wire that you can attach it. So I'm going to leave the link in description to the video where I made actually extension wires that you can put in between a spark plug and coil to get your signal. So I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about here. So this is my Sebring. So this is basically coil and plug, but what I did, I made these extensions and put these extensions, and now we can actually put this in between our coil and the spark plug, get our clamp, and get ignition waveform. Now again, this is not going to work every time, of course. When we have a coil and plugs that are covered by intake manifold, or like on this car, coil and plugs on the second bank, on bank 1, they're next to the firewall. It's very difficult to get to it in the first place. Now in that case the pedal will work better, but again sometimes it's hard to get the good signal if the coils are insulated. So again, that's a main reason why ignition waveforms are very difficult to get, and getting more and more difficult to be interpreted, to be read. And one other thing I also find out is that every scope almost going to give you different waveforms. So I was using the OTC yesterday, and it was really difficult to me. It was hard. Now we're going to do some tests today. I'm going to use this. This is a graphic multimeter. So I'm gonna make comparison between a graphic multimeter and the lab scope. I'm sorry. And also, what I want to do now, I'm gonna talk a little bit about ignition waveform itself, what to look for, and how to recognize the different problems in ignition. So when we get the again, I'm not expert by any means with this. All I want to do is to make the video just to compare and to see how this is going to change, how the waveform changes with the in different situations. So what I have here, I got my front 3 spark plugs removed, and in the first cylinder I have a good spark plug. In the middle cylinder, I took the spark plug and I increased the gap on the spark plug itself, and on the third cylinder I actually made a smaller gap on the spark plug. So we're gonna look at the signal on each cylinder, how that's gonna affect our ignition and our ignition waveform. And then once we're done with that, then I'm going to put the spark plug, the good spark plug, back in the car, in the engine, and then we're going to play with the fuel, and we're going to add some fuel, we're going to take the fuel away, and I'm going to see also how that affects our ignition as well. So basically every single problem that you can have in a cylinder, it's going to reflect on the ignition waveform. Whether it's a bad coil, wire, spark plug, fuel, too much fuel, not enough fuel, the compression inside the cylinder, all that can be seen on the ignition waveform. It's just a matter how good you are to do it, and I'm really working hard to get myself more educated, you know, when it comes to ignition waveform. So again, this might be a little bit long video, but I think there's a lot of ground to cover, so we'll see. So anyway, this is the this is ignition waveform when we're going to see on our lab scope, and what we see, there's also down here on this side, this is what we call the dwell time, basically how long computer is going to power our coil to for the coil to produce enough voltage to jump the gap on the spark plug. So in the ignition circuit, the gap on the spark plug should be the highest resistance. There should not be no other resistance in the system that can affect that. So the next one is going to be the fire line or power kV. This is going to be, I'm going to go through that as well, and next is going to be the spark line, basically the duration of the spark itself. So I'm just going to read this real quick, just a couple details here. They said that the firing line, the power kV, is measured in kilovolts and represent a amount of voltage required to start a spark across the spark plug gap. Firing voltage must overcome secondary circuit resistance, including secondary cable and the spark plug. Remember, the spark plug air gap is typically the highest resistance in the circuit. So as I said, the plug itself, you know, there is the gap is going to be the highest resistance in the circuit. And so that the high spikes in the kV readings indicate a high secondary circuit resistance. This can be caused by lean air fuel mixture and wide spark plug gap, or high resistance or open spark plug wire. The high spike above are caused by an open in only one. This is just an example of what they're talking about here on this picture here. So that's not a big deal. Let's see if it says. So that's what can cause a high spark line, firing line. Now the low spikes on the kV readings indicate low secondary circuit resistance, which means they can be caused by rich air-fuel mixture, a narrow spark plug gap, low resistance or shorted spark plug wire, or low compression. So let's just analyze this real quick. So what they're saying here is that the firing line, so basically the power that coil needs to produce to a jump gap on the spark plug will be affected with different reasons. When the spark plug circuit needs a higher power kV, there's a unwanted resistance in the circuit. So it can be caused by bigger gap on the spark plug, so that's going to need more voltage to jump that gap on the spark plug. It can be caused by lean air-fuel mixture. It's the reason because is that the spark plug is going to have it's going to be needed more voltage to jump that lean mixture inside the cylinder versus the rich mixture. It's going to need less power, and it's going to need less voltage to do so. And we're gonna see that as well today when I'm gonna increase and decrease the fuel mixture in a cylinder. Also, if we have a low compression inside a cylinder, that's going to be less resistance, so the power kV is going to be lower. So basically, low compression and a rich fuel mixture will result in a lower power kV, and the higher bigger gap on the spark plug and the lean fuel mixture is going to increase the power on the coil, increase resistance. Now the spark kV, it's kind of interesting. The spark kV represent the voltage required to maintain spark for the duration of the spark event. Normal spark kV should be between 1 to 4 kV. High spark kV readings indicate high secondary circuit resistance. The low spark kV reading indicates a low circuit resistance. So as I said, this was said that the spark kV, we're going to see that on the waveform. So the spark is just that's voltage needed for to maintain the spark. Now the spark time should be anywhere between 1 to 3 millivolts, and the spark is needed basically to burn the fuel mixture inside a cylinder. So if you have a spark that's shorter, it's not going to burn all of the mixture inside a cylinder. Also, so that this spark kV is needed to maintain that spark. And I said next will be the burn time. The burn time represents the duration of the spark event, and should normally measure between 1 to 3 milliseconds. Again, it says if the firing kV increases, burn time will decrease, and if the firing kV decreases, burn time will increase. Again, this is a lot of information, and but to be good at this, it just really takes a long time just to look at the ignition waveforms and understand what's happening. So again, my goal today is to show you guys what is happening on our waveform, how to get the waveform, and now this engine is going to misfire on 2 cylinders because of the problem with the spark plugs. I said I increased the gap on one spark plug and I decreased the gap on another. So those 2 cylinders are going to misfire. So we're going to basically be able to compare good cylinder to other two they're not, and we'll see on the other two, we'll see what the difference is going to be because of a difference in the gap. Now what we have, basically it's very simple setup. I have all of my 3 coils removed, and I put my my ignition wires in between. Now I have my modus here, and for now I'm just gonna keep it on the lab scope. And the reason I want to do that, now this scope has ignition scope built in, preset basically, and we can do that. But the reason I want to do lab scope is it has ignition scope built in, but I'm just going to go to the lab scope, and the reason is I want to have 2 channels, so I want to compare a secondary and a primary ignition waveform and see how similar they are. So in order to get that, what I have here, I'm going to have 2 leads hooked up on the channel 1. I'm sorry. There's going to be a yellow trace. Is going to be my ignition waveform from secondary ignition waveform from my pickup coil. So that's going to be. Sorry. So the pickup coil is connected to channel 1, and it's just going to be wrapped around my. Going to be connected to my ignition wire. And channel 2, the green channel, it's going to be this yellow lead, and I have my black. I have the black lead connected to the ground right there, and the positive lead will be connected to a control wire on our coil. So now, as I said, we're going to be able to get both signals at the same time. So this is going to be the primary from our coil control wire, and this is going to be a secondary from our ignition pickup probe. Now, this one's going to be my graphing multimeter. So, and this is kind of interesting tool that not many people use it anymore, but what we're going to see on our lab scope, we're going to see the same thing on the graphing multimeter, but the graphing multimeter cannot see the whole picture. What it does, it will dissect certain certain pieces of our injection. Let's see, just go here on our. I'm sorry, guys. Ignition waveform. So what this can do, I'm just going to go to conventional ignition because now I'm just hooked up straight to my wire, and so this can actually read power kV, spark kV, and a burn time. So instead of seeing the whole picture, we can only look at the certain part of the ignition waveform. Let's again, this car is going to misfire because of the bad spark plugs, but now I'm going to get you guys close to, let's move this around a little bit better. And one other thing also, it seems like almost every scope is going to give you different waveform. I mean, they're generally the same, but they can be very difficult to understand. So I found this modus actually to work the best for me. And I'll also I really like this graphic multimeter because for the simple reason because I'm not good at it, and this actually can help me dissect the waveform and just to focus on one particular moment in my ignition waveform to understand what's happening. So let's start the car. And now one other thing we're going to do also, we're going to look at the dwell time, and that's basically the time that how long computer saturates the coils, and that will be affected also by how long the computer power the coils, and they will be actually the spark plug gap will affect that big time. So we're gonna see that as well. So let me find my keys, and then we'll start. Okay, so this is the good cylinder. I think this is number 2, I guess. I really didn't check my firing order, but never mind. So this is the good cylinder, and what we see here is the yellow trace is our secondary, the green trace is our primary, and we can see they are almost identical to each other. Now the yellow one, the secondary, actually I went to the preset for I use as ignition probe, and it can actually tell us what is our spark kV and all that. And power kV, but it's going to be a little hard to read that because of the way it's laid out. But my goal is just to show you guys, what is the those two signals look like. Now they are a little jumpy because of the problem on the other two cylinders. I'll just briefly show you the engine. It really jumps like crazy because of those misfiring cylinders, but. Okay, so let's, what we see here, this is the first waveform, this is our dwell time. On the primary, actually, we can see that, let's see if oh no, I'm sorry. Let's go. Oh, this is our battery voltage around 13 volts. We could go, this is a 0 volt, so this is 0 line, so this is the ground, the computer grounds the coil, so that's what we see on the primary. On the secondary we don't see that, but we see it on the primary. So if you have like a problem on the ground circuit, we can see that if you have a problem on the ground wire. And the next here is, try to move this a little bit. So this is my trigger here. Again, this is the moment when the computer turned the ignition coils off, and this is when the spark plug happens. And now we can measure the duration of the spark plug. No, sorry, spark. I'm sorry. What am I doing? Come on. Okay. So now we see that our let's see how this is. Okay. So anyway, the spark plug duration is 1.33 milliseconds, and we can write that down. Okay, so sorry. So that's now how are we gonna see this the spark? Let's see, our burn time. This is our burn time, 1.3 milliseconds. So let's see what this is gonna look like on the graphic multimeter. And there you go. You see that? That's pretty nice. So we got a 1.23. And it's 1.225, depends how it goes. So this is our burn time. This is so basically what graphic multimeter it gives us just this it's a graph of the burn time. So just this moment here. This is what this represents. Now the other thing we can look on this one is also we can look a spark. Let's see, the power kV. So the power kV will be this spike. Let's see if I can. So this will be measured with the ignition scope. So let's see if we can. Let's see. I don't know my cursor. So let's go to 1. Well, I'm just going to turn off the primary for a second so we can let's see. I'm sorry guys, I'm a little lost here. There we go. I need to go back and I don't have my okay, so let's move my cursor down. So basically right now I'm only having a secondary waveform. So we're going to compare. So this is our power kV here. This line here is a power kV, and this is like a, so it's like I'm at the 5 kilovolts here. So I'm going to change that. Okay, so it jumps quite a bit because of the misfire on another cylinder, but again, it's kind of erratic. Let me see if I can change my stabilize it a little bit. It just really kind of bleeds, you know, to this cylinder. So, but anyway, this is actually where this tool is actually kind of even better, because it just gives us a nice graph of our power kV. This one is kind of jumpy. So this represent these numbers here. So other thing we also can see here is it's got a burn time. Burn time is 1.3, we've already seen that, so this is our burn time here. And spark kV, it's basically this moment here, but you really don't see that very well of ignition waveform. The spark kV is 0.4 kilovolts. Let's see. The spark kV, it's actually a moment right here. It's really jumpy. This waveform is all over the place. Anyway, I'm going to get the second channel back in line. So our spark kV is actually this line here, from 0 to here. You actually can see it better on the primary waveform. So this is the spark kV, right? From here to here. Okay, so basically this the voltage needed to keep our spark going. Okay, so let's go to cylinder 1 that has a longer, and now also what we need to look is a dwell time. So around 1.6 milliseconds on the good cylinder. Okay, so 1.6. So let's see what's going to happen the next cylinder. I'm going to move my leads. So we are going to the cylinder that has a bigger gap on the spark plug. So this represents a higher resistance in a circuit. Okay, so basically we have a bigger gap to jump, needs more power to do it, and we can see that our dwell time is actually a lot longer. So computer is energizing the coils a lot longer. Now we actually get 3 milliseconds, almost 3 times as this 1.6 from the first one. So we get 3 now. So we are like our dwell time is twice as longer, 3 milliseconds. Actually, yeah, 3 milliseconds. Now so now the spark kV didn't change much at all. You can see this line here didn't change much. The next we're going to measure our spark line, and it was 1.3, and it's a little like 0.9, a little shorter, it seems like 1 millisecond. So the spark line doesn't really, let me rev it up a little bit. So a lot of hash in a signal, but you can see that it's kind of actually, it's, this is what kind of, it's hard for me to understand as well. So let's go to on the graphing multimeter and the burn time. And the burn time, see, it's almost the same, but on the good cylinder it's 1.2, 1.3. So this is our burn time, and not much of a difference even with the higher spark plug gap. The burn time is almost the same, but a huge difference in the dwell time. So let's go to a power kV. The power kV now it's 16, 17. So I think it was. I'm gonna go back to my good one real quick to measure that. So we got 17 now. I think it was like 14. There you go. This is on a good one with 13, 14 kV, and our dwell time was less. Now we're going to a cylinder with a higher resistance. Now it jumps up to 17, 18 kV. So this is indication that you're gonna have a higher gap on your spark plug, or basically higher resistance in a circuit. This can be also caused by a lean air fuel mixture. So this is what we can look for. Power kV absolutely a lot higher than what's on the good cylinder if we use this tool. Other than that, not much of a difference in a burn time. Burn time was pretty much the same, 1.3, and the burn and the spark kV, it was pretty much the same as well. So one clue is to look at the dwell time, look at the power kV. That's your indication of the higher resistance in a circuit. So you're looking for a bigger gap on a spark plug, or problem with the air fuel mixture, where the mixture is too lean. But with the lab scope you really can see, a lot of jumping on our spark on our burn time. But these things are really confusing for me. What to look for, how to know exactly what you're dealing with. So let's go to cylinder with a very small spark plug gap. And we can see there's a lot of hash in the signal. Now the spark kV is still the same, not much of a difference there. But on the lab scope we see a lot of hash in a spark plug. Let me let's see. I'm gonna leave that on. Now let's just measure. I need to lower my oh, sorry guys, I hit it in my hand. So I'm going to lower my trigger even more. See if I can. There you go, that's better. So I can see it. I mean, you can unreadable burn time here. Let's see. Dwell time is it's almost I have to stop this. I'm going to stop for a second so I can measure my dwell time. So that okay. So dwell time is let's see, 0.7 milliseconds. So very small dwell time because it doesn't need that much power. The good one was 1.3 milliseconds, almost like a half. So we can actually see how the resistance changes. In a good cylinder, the dwell time was 1.3 on the cylinder, 1.3 milliseconds. On a cylinder with a high resistance, with a bigger gap, was almost 3 milliseconds. And now on the cylinder with a very small gap, the resistance is very low, we have a 0.7 milliseconds. Very, very small, very short dwell time because of lower resistance in a circuit. So that's kind of cool to see how the dwell time reacts. Basically, this is what the computer is doing. Now to measure our burn time, I don't even know if it's possible or not. I'm just gonna stop again. Again, this is a very bad picture, but this is what you would see if you have a bad spark plug with a very small gap. Let's see if I can measure. No, it's just not good signal at all. I mean, I don't even know where to stop. It's like 1 millisecond or so. But it's actually nice to see how primary and secondary signals are very, very similar to each other. So again, here you see that. But what we're going to see on the graphing multimeter now. So the spark kV is pretty much the same. Let's go to burn time. 1.3. Still, this tool cannot really read this much of a problem. Sorry, in a firing, in a burn time. But this is going to be interesting. Now let's go to a power kV. And the power kV is 5 kV. It's amazingly low, and that's because of the short dwell time. Our power kV is very, very, very short now. Very small power kV, only 5. Power kV it's very low, only 5 kVs basically. So let me just do this now. I'm gonna, and this is a huge clue for guys when you're diagnosing this, and this tool is actually, it is a very much better, in my opinion, than looking at the whole trace. So let's go now from a good cylinder, look at the power kV, then we're going to go to one with a high resistance, and then we're going to go to one with the low resistance. So this is a good cylinder, and we see that we just stabilize it around 13 kV. Okay. Okay, let's go to one with a high resistance. We're going from 13. Got a 14, 13 now. Got a 15. So you guys see the spikes now in a fire. Now the resistance is higher, therefore our power kV is higher as well. Look at the 22. So it just has to overcome that additional resistance. Look at the huge spikes in the kV here, more and more. So this is the one that has a higher resistance, so it needs more power to jump that gap. And now let's go to one with a low resistance. And boom, the huge difference now. Let's see. Okay, so let me check the power. Alright, so that was I think that was a good example how the spark plug gap affect the our burn time, affect our dwell time, affect our power kV. Again, whichever tool you're going to use, you know, it's just up to you. But in a way, I really actually like this one, this graphing multimeter. And unfortunately, I can only use this one with to get a good signal on this tool. What I've found is only if I can, if I have a spark plug wire that I can attach my ignition probe to. I'm having also a problem with the race spark system on this tool as well. I'm having a hard time to get the signal on the, but I'm still learning that. But you could get, my goal was to show a difference in a resistance in the cylinder and how that reflects to our waveform from the primary, secondary, and also now on this graphing multimeter basically gives you the graph from the secondary ignition waveform. Okay, I want to emphasize that as well. So okay, so now I'm going to put the spark plugs back in the car, the good ones, and then we're gonna look at we're gonna play with fuel and see how the fuel is gonna affect our ignition pattern as well. So now I'll show you. These are my good spark plugs. I'm gonna put these in, and then we're gonna play with the fuel. Okay guys, well, I got my spark plug back in. These are the spark plugs that I had it in the, it was still really hot. So this one with a big gap, the one with a small gap, and these are the gaps that should be. So this is the good one, and okay. So right now I'm just going to stay on one cylinder, no needs to move to different cylinders. And let's see now. So what I'm going to do next, I'm just going to try to make a lean enriched condition by inducing more fuel and taking the fuel away. So let's see how that's going to affect our ignition waveforms. So okay, and actually you can see now in our burn time on the you know, this is a good cylinder now. This is nice and smooth. Before we had a lot of jumping up and down and especially one that had a small gap. So okay, so now the again, everything that's happening in the engine, it will affect ignition or our ignition waveform. Whether it is now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to simulate a low compression problem on the engine because you know, I don't have an engine that has low compression, cylinder with low compression. That would be a result in a low resistance, so our power kV would be low, and that would be the most visible one. Where the power kV would be a lot lower. So one more thing that I want to show you guys also on this tool. the spark kV. So this is the spark. This is the voltage needed for spark to occur. If you see a spark here, so this is actually a little spike here. This is kind of odd. You don't want to see that. This is actually indication that I'm gonna. If you see this, actually, it's kind of weird. Maybe I'm not doing the. When you see something like this on the spark kV, that's indication that that's outside of the combustion chamber wires, coil, or spark plug. It's kind of weird that I'm having this actually. Maybe it was maybe I did not have my my wire, and if I'm jiggling, I'm moving my wire right now. This kind of induces this as well, but it'll be okay. Okay, so let's go back to. I'm still having the spike. Huh. Go to power kV. So right now we have like a 22 because of my fan are running, and the idle is a little higher. So the next one I'm going to remove my relay from my fuel pump, and what's going to happen, I'm gonna make lean mixture, and then I'm going to see how that's going to affect our power kV, and I'm going to increase this to maximum 50 kV actually, and I'm just going to wait for the fans to stop, and then we'll so basically with the lean fuel mixture we will create a high resistance that's gonna our power kV is going to be higher. It's going to be, and most likely our dwell is going to be longer as well. So and also on our burn time here on the lab scope, we'll see this part of the waveform is gonna change as well. It's going to be a lot higher. I'm going to move this to another cylinder. Just waiting for my fan to stop. Okay, I think this will work. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pull my relay and I'm going to rev the engine up, and we'll see what happens. Just a second, I need to get this in hold. Okay. Okay, I need to get my tools ready so I can stop it. Okay, so let's see what we got here. I think I did not keep my let's see guys. Okay, still good. Okay, I don't see a lot of difference in power kV, but this is a big clue on the lean mixture. You can see this higher kick on your burn time. This is indication of a lean mixture. Oh, come on. I have to do this again. I messed it up. Okay. There you go. Now we got it. Okay. So what we did see here. So this is our lean mixture. You can see it a lot of this is the kick on the, and this is actually lean mixture. Is a lot better to look on the burn time. And that's what you want to do. You rev the engine up, you increase the RPM, and then you will see this huge kick in. Basically, this is a high resistance in your cylinder due to a lean mixture. So let's see if I can see another one. This is higher as well, higher, yeah. Look at that. A huge spike in the shorter burn time, but the kicks are amazing. I mean, it's off chart. You cannot even see that. You don't even see it. So this is your lean mixture, but also it's reflected on the firing kV. You can see here that at the very end, as the mixture got really lean, our firing kV dramatically increased up to like 20 kV, I believe it was, 21 kV, yeah. So from 14 or 11, so almost doubled. So that's indication of the. So anything that causes a high resistance in the circuit, it's gonna reflect on the firing kV. It's gonna increase the voltage on the yeah. So and also this is for the lean mixture. This is the best way to go when you look at the burn time. And okay, and the next one. Okay, so this is that's the firing kV. I meant a power kV. I'm sorry. So you'll see that the power kV has increased. It went to like 21 kV, and the last one, I'm gonna now put some propane in the cylinders in my intake manifold, and we'll see what how that's going to reflect our readings. Get my relay back. Okay, so I'm just going to use a bottle of propane. I'm going to put a little bit in so again, I'm just going to look the power kV. I expect this to go down a little bit, and we'll see how that's going to affect our burn time and our dwell time as well. and adding the fuel. We can see that the power, how it went down. And now this is going to probably go back when the computers, but see how this is the power kV, because of the lower resistance now. It's easier for a spark plug to jump the gap, and our power kV it's lower. And actually a little kick on our burn time as well. It's a lot lower power kV. But now the computer is gonna start taking the fuel away. Probably this should go back up once the computer is struggling to control the fuel mixture. So it's gonna start cutting the fuel injectors. But now it starts to go back up. See that? And that's when now computer is in the control again. It's gonna start to control the fuel trim. And not much of a difference in the burn time here, the spark time. I'm sorry. Let's see. Now it's pretty much almost back to normal because it's able to control this extra. In the burn time, I'm gonna stop this now. I have to do it slowly now because the computer is taking the fuel away. But if I shut the propane too fast, it will die. Okay, so now I'm going to induce the more propane again. We're back to normal. Let's see if the burn time is going to change any. Change in idle. Graphing multimeter, it's not picking up much of a difference in a burn time at all. There's a more harsh, we've seen that when it's nice and even, we're going to have a nicer line here. It's a little choppy, but this would be hard to figure out, what's the reason for this for the burn time to be like this. And go back. But the biggest clue here, in my opinion, is basically a power kV. So when the resistance is lower, the power kV is lower as well. And this would be the same also with low compression. So let me add some more propane again. Immediately we can see drop in the power kV. Okay, so now the computer is controlling the fuel trim again. We're going back to normal. But now if we see the the fuel trim in a negative fuel trim, basically computer is taking fuel away, and we see that our power kV is low. That's indication that we probably have a low compression or maybe a fuel injector that leaks, or maybe problem with too much of a fuel pressure for some reason, something like that. So, okay. Okay, guys. Well, that's all I had for this time. I hope this was useful. Again, I'm struggling with this big time, trying to understand all this, but I did pick up kind of bits and pieces, and my goal here was to show you guys, what is happening in our how to read ignition waveform, and how the different resistance is gonna affect our ignition. Okay, again, to recap everything, We know now that high resistance is caused by a bigger gap on the spark plug, the bad spark plug wire, lean fuel mixture for sure, and that's that the high resistance is gonna affect our power kV. Is going to be higher. Basically, needs more voltage to jump the gap on the spark plug. The low resistance is caused by low compression, by a smaller gap on the spark plug, rich fuel mixture, and all that's going to reflect on our power kV. It's going to be lower. So that's it. I mean, this is now we can see that lean mixture is the burn time is kind of the best way to go to find out on our burn time. We could see that that the kick at the very end was really high because of the lean fuel mixture, and also our power kV was higher as well. Okay, I think I didn't confuse everybody with this, okay, guys, this is all I want to show you. I also want to show you different, tools, graphing multimeter versus the lab scope and ignition scope. Again, I did try the OTC graphing multimeter, and it was a complete disaster. I could not get any useful graph whatsoever. It was just jumping from 20 kV to 0 non-stop. I just can't. I'm not sure what the deal is that scope is. I cannot. I was working on it yesterday, and I just could not. I don't know what the deal is. I'm doing something wrong with that scope, but I cannot get good ignition waveform on the graphing multimeter on the OTC scope. Okay, guys. Well, that's all. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Thank you.